Hi, welcome to the She Moves Mountains podcast. This is your host, Kamala Murphy. Thanks for joining us today as we talk about some of the juicy stuff we women experience that makes this life journey truly amazing. You know, the nitty-gritty, the love, the loss, the falling down and rising up, the getting lost and finding our way again. To our hearts, our happiness, and to the awareness that we can and do move mountains. Thank you for joining. Hi, this is Kamala Murphy, your host for the She Moves Mountains podcast. Welcome to this episode. So glad to have you here. In today's episode, I wanted to talk a bit about what it means to move mountains. What am I really talking about? It's interesting because when my colleague first suggested She Moves Mountains as a title for this podcast, I got excited right away. But then I started having a lot of doubts flood in. I mean, who was I to talk about moving mountains when it doesn't ever seem like I've done anything really mountain-sized? So it took me a couple of days going back and forth as to whether or not I could claim She Moves Mountains as the title. And then I was able to start to ask, well, what does moving mountains actually mean to me? Does it actually mean moving a mountain, a big thing of granite? Or does it mean moving something huge in one fell swoop, which is actually sort of a sneak peek into how I think. It's like it's all or nothing. And another question, does it actually mean that I have to have a certain amount or type of faith, like a mustard seed? Anyway, clearly I've got a lot of questions about this, but I think that I'm discovering finally that, like so many other things in this life, each of us gets to make up our own meaning about basically everything, and definitely about what moving mountains means to us. So my frame of reference here, the meaning I'm going to be giving it is moving a mountain is doing the things that you didn't know that you could, the things that scare you or challenge you or stretch you, and the things that make you feel proud of yourself once you've done them. And maybe it's not climbing Mount Everest, or maybe it's running a 5K, or maybe even it's walking around the block when you'd really kind of rather sit on the couch and eat tortilla chips, which is a familiar scenario for me. But I have paraphrased a quote from Confucius. Clearly he used man, and so I'm using woman. The woman who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. And that is a huge, helpful reminder for me, because as I mentioned above, it's like I'm thinking it has to all be done in one big chunk. Well, what if it is just moving away the small stones, getting up off the couch and walking around the block? So I'm wondering, what are some of the mountains that you want to move? What do you want to be doing differently in your life or making different? For me, I got to admit that some of my biggest mountains are actually between my ears. Like assuming that because my mountains didn't move overnight or with one attempt, that the little stones that I've carried away, those movements don't really count. And in my case, a lot of the time I wouldn't ever give myself credit for the small, consistent actions that I did take because they weren't huge and didn't have big results. But that's changing, because by practicing shifting my thinking and acknowledging that by taking these small actions consistently, And even that, what does consistently mean? Anyway, um, but by taking actions and doing them, take one step after one step after one step, that the landscape of my life actually does change, and mountains are moved. And then by seeing that the things are changing, I can believe that it is possible that I actually do move mountains with clearly a lot of help. So one of the quotes that I found is from David Schwartz. Um, and what he says is, those who believe they can move mountains do. Those who believe they can't, cannot. Belief triggers the power to do. So that's why it's really important for us to shift our thinking so we actually know that with a little effort and consistency and divine guidance, divine help, that we actually can move mountains, do the things that we long to do the things that are important to us, that change our landscape. One other piece for me, again, is that knowing if I'm really meant to do something, like hosting this podcast, then I've got to know that God has my back, that I am not alone, that I can trust that it's all taken care of. I may have obstacles, I may have to carry away a whole lot of stones, but God's got this. God's got my back. And if it's meant to be moved, it will happen. I just have to do my part. I have to keep moving away those small stones. Um, Another quote I wanted to share with you is from Martha Beck, who is a wonderful author and thought leader. She says, if a problem looks difficult, relax. If it looks impossible, relax even more. Then begin encouraging small changes, putting just enough pressure on yourself to move one turtle step forward. Then rest, savor, celebrate. Then step again. You'll find that slow is fast, gentle is powerful, and stillness moves mountains. I just get chills reading that. Sort of paradigm shift for me. So, especially the part about, taking the small steps, then rest, savor, and celebrate. Celebrate those small actions, because that just gives us more momentum. And how many of us really celebrate our small actions? I know that's something that's really relatively new. I tell clients all the time, celebrate the little wins, but sometimes I forget myself. And with that too, it just, golly, it just seems like so often I have been a prisoner. Like I said, it's all my mountains, not all, but a lot of my mountains are between my ears. Um, I have been a prisoner of my own beliefs, and thus the not very healthy behaviors that I've done. Many of those caused by those responses to earlier experiences, like the daddy issues that I mentioned in episode 3. The inner work of moving mountains, of creating a life that you love, a flambe, feeling like $1,000,000, often means that we're going to have to clear away some of the blocks that we've built up, that we think are protecting us. And we can't really be these amazing, bright, vibrant, vital women if we're unconsciously holding on to a bunch of resentments and old wounds and heartaches, mm, and the feelings of betrayal. So if you suspect that some of the old ways of thinking are preventing you from moving the mountains that you want to, I'm going to encourage you to take a quiz that I've developed. The title is, how much are your past heartbreaks actually still sabotaging you and your happiness? And that can be found at bit.ly/heartache quiz, which I'll include in the show notes. And if you are looking for someone to help you find out what your mountains are and how to move them with a little more grace and ease, I'd love to have you reach out to me at kamalamurphy.com. Murphy is with an E, and I'll have that in the show notes as well. And ask to have a consultation with me. I'd love to do that. So, I think that's it. Well, there's one more piece, actually. I'd like to end with a little quote from, actually, Dr. Seuss. Let me get that here. I'll read a couple of pages here. You'll get mixed up, of course, as you already know. You'll get mixed up with many strange birds as you go. So be sure when you step with care and great tact, and remember that life's a great balancing act. Just never forget to be dexterous and deft, and never mix up your right foot with your left. And indeed, will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. Kid, you will move mountains. So, be your name Buxom or Bixby or Bray or Mordecai Ally, then Alan O'Shea, you're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting. So get on your way. Thank you so much for joining me today. With lots of love and blessings. This is Kamala Murphy. I look forward to connecting with you next time when the episode is called Finding a Faith That Fits, which is probably not your grandma's God. So lots of love and blessings to you. Again, take care. This is Kamala Murphy. Until next time. Bye for now. You've been listening to the She Moves Mountains podcast, coming to you every week. If you're a woman who wants to move mountains in your own life, please make sure to subscribe or follow this podcast. And if you've laughed or gotten teary or smiled knowingly thinking, oh yeah, that's me too, please go ahead and rate the episode with 5 stars. It'll be a feel-good thing to do. Thanks a bunch. Lots of love and blessings to you. This is Kamala signing off. Until next week. Take care.